Imagine a world without choices. Imagine you can't make your own decision. That wouldn't be a world for me. That wouldn't be a world for you. UIC.
Tell them we're gonna be stronger. Together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. Gonna be stronger together. Time we all just unify. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. It is a natural right for every human being to be free. Free, so free. So the
Hello and welcome to this evening's edition of UIC Liberty TV. My name is Douglas Harper, and we're going to be dealing with the topic of, government overstepping its boundaries? Chase Neal should have been doing the program tonight, but unfortunately, he's not able to come on for connection issues. Well, I think he got trapped on the road. They're having some road blockages again in St. Mary. And so he's not able to make it home in time. So I'm stepping in for him tonight. So before we get into the topic of, whether the government is overstepping its bounds, I just want to big up some of the people in the chat here. JMH, good night. Bless up yourself. Also, it's only JMH. Drop something in the comment. Let me know, guys, where you're listening in from. Good night, Darnett Myers. Good night. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and I'll send you a shout out on our live. So tonight is, as I said, we're talking about whether the government is overstepping its bounds. We've been experiencing a lot of interesting movements from the government in the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years. I mean, well, last 78 years really, but in the last 2 to 3 years, we've been seeing some interesting developments and movements and positioning from the government. So, it's very interesting. Good night, Kirk. So tonight, as I said, we're dealing with, has the government overstepped its bounds? The present government administration has been under fire since taking office. And tonight, we're not even going to look at the multiple cases or instances of what they call misappropriation, but really what we want to look at tonight is those glaring instances of disregard for personal sovereignty, to our citizens, such as the contemplation of mandatory vaccines. Of course, the infamous scare read jab versus jobs last year that happened, robbing the people of their right to expression, movement, and association. And before that was the invasive needs bill that was forced through the House of Representation and the Senate, despite outcry from the public and the opposition. It took the intervention of the Supreme Court for the Prime Minister to back down and revisit the bill. So right now, we're having, we've had those past issues in the last 2 years, 3 years. And right now, we're looking at the dispossession of Jamaicans from their homes without due process. So here is another case or another issue of disregard for personal sovereignty for our citizens. And so we must ask, are all these actions of government right? Are they moral? Are they within the purpose and scope of government? And what is government supposed to do, right? What is the role of government? So notice the question isn't whether what the government is doing is legal. That's not the question at all, because we know that, government can pass laws and, make bad laws good, or make bad laws effective, So people think that because it's a law, it's supposed to be, followed. But, you know, not every law is a good law, right? Not all laws are good or just. And the government writes laws to benefit themselves and their associates in any way, right? So, first question is, what is the reason for and purpose of government? So, has the government overstepped its bounds? That is its moral bounds and the purpose for which it exists. To answer this question properly, we must explore why we need government and what is the purpose of government. So I'm going to play a video for you guys right now that speaks to what the purpose of government is. And then we come back and talk a little more. Come back and talk a little more. So here we go. What is the purpose? Or actually, is this it? No, this is not it. This is it. Okay.
Welcome to Archaeologists Anonymous, a safe space for you archaeology addicts out there. On this episode, we'll be tackling the big question: where did the first governments come from?
Sorry guys, my bad. You weren't seeing the video. All right. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to Archaeologists Anonymous, a safe space for you archaeology addicts out there. On this episode, we'll be tackling the big question: where did the first governments come from? Okay, so this is a pretty big issue. There are a number of different theories as to why governments started, and since it is so worldwide, some theories work better in some parts of the world, some better in others, and as with anything in history, there's typically more than one explanation for everything, so it could be a combination of several of these theories. So with that in mind, let's talk about the different theories people have come up with for why we started governments. First, let's go back to the 1950s and talk about the hydraulic hypothesis. This was by the historian Karl Wittfogel. This theory suggests that it was irrigation that led to the creation of the first governments. Irrigation was a technique where people dug water channels in order to better water crops. It really increased the agricultural yield. And when you increase the agricultural yield, you can lead to specialization and you can start building cities. But in order to organize irrigation, there needed to be some kind of system. There had to be some kind of management to create the, ambitious project that was irrigating crop fields.
I'd like to speak to the manager.
So out of this civic need to manage irrigation systems, we get an organization devoted to that, which turns into a government. So that's one theory. In the 1960s, Russian historian Igor Diakonov came up with a different theory. His theory was very influenced by a Marxist reading of history and focused on internal conflict.
I will saw the tables of tyranny in half!
Basically, the idea was, as technology improved, as agriculture improved, and wealth increased, it was focused on a certain class of people, and there was internal conflict between the haves and the have-nots. And his theory was that governments were created to impose order on class conflict, and to help manage internal differentiation and wealth distribution in a society.
Alexa, who is this?
The free working people united in servitude as a motherland.
Now, another theory proposed by Kent Flannery focuses on warfare as a prime motivating factor. When groups come into conflict in a war, it's typically useful to have someone put in charge of the operation to conduct the warfare. And as friction between different societies mandated this sort of warfare hierarchy, that hierarchy got codified permanently into a system of government. So, what is war good for? Well, according to Kent Flannery, forming states. Yeah! A different explanation for this issue focuses on population growth as a different motivating factor. As population growth increases, the necessity to effectively manage resources increases in order to make sure that everyone is provided for. And this, in some ways, pairs with the hydraulic irrigation-focused hypothesis, and it's the idea that in order to make sure that everyone is provided for and to limit disorder in a society, you need to have a government that is laying out systems of resource management. The population hypothesis actually pairs well with a number of these explanations. Like I said, it's rarely just one explanation as to why anything happened in the past. Another theory that sort of modifies a number of these is the idea of environmental circumscription, and it seeks to emphasize the role of the environment in this discussion. The idea is that constraints imposed by the environment required human organization, and this is another example of a theory where organization to solve a particular problem, whether it be population, warfare, or the environment, creates a system of government.
The super strong waterproof tape!
Another theory along these lines was proposed by William Rathje, and it's about trade. The idea is that as different societies trade with each other, there is a pressure to create more specialized goods to help you when you're trading. You want to have cool stuff to trade, and in order to get specialized goods, you need more societal organization. So this is another example of a need. In this case, the need to create goods for trading creates organization that leads to government.
You know, we're living in a society. We're supposed to act in a civilized way.
So those are some of the major theories as to why human society developed governments and states. I have been Sean Sylvia of Archaeologists Anonymous. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video.
Right, so we just basically saw in that video where governments really arose out of, the progress of human civilization and the need for order in the civilization. Whether it was from the need to organize human beings for efficiency in agriculture and trade, or to manage disputes between classes of people and between individuals, or just to be organized to protect or expand one's territory. Historians, sociologists, and archaeologists cite a number of reasons for why the governments arose. But now we see why we needed governments in the first place. So now let's look at what the government is really actually supposed to do. I'm going to play another video for you guys, and it will show you what really is the purpose of government. So we watch this video and come back.
Government. A subject bursting with debate and diplomacy. One in which everyone has an opinion to share. The earliest governments arose from a need to protect people and food supplies. Monarchies were established, and rulers crafted laws to govern the land and built armies to protect their people. The ideas of government and laws have changed and evolved over the course of human history, and the importance of government has become clearer. In 1809, American President Thomas Jefferson retired from public office and said, "The care of human life and happiness, and not their destruction, is the first and only legitimate object of good government." And he was onto something. Governments keep us safe. Governments fund police forces, firefighters, intelligence agencies, investigators, and armed forces and more to protect citizens. These brave people work tirelessly to keep citizens safe and society running smoothly. Governments also keep order. Unless you live in a blissful utopia, conflicts are sure to arise. How is society prepared to resolve those conflicts? That's where government steps in. Local, state, and national governments create rules and laws for people to follow. They also have the power to enforce those laws to keep order in society. Imagine a sports game without a referee or rules. The probability of chaos and conflict would be high. Governments provide important services. The next time you venture out into your local community, take a look around you. People are enjoying services provided by their government all over the place. From libraries, public parks, police and fire departments, to schools, hospitals, road crews, garbage collection, mail deliveries, and more, government workers provide important services for people. Adult citizens pay taxes to fund projects that directly help their communities. Lastly, governments guide society. The government constantly works to meet the needs of its citizens. It does so by creating public policies or decisions that work to solve the problems in society. Examples of public policy include healthcare, education, defense spending, agriculture, environment, energy, and national security, just to name a few. Different levels of government often work together to solve regional or national issues. The U.S. national government also works with other governments around the world to solve international disputes and keep the peace. While government is working to keep us safe, providing law and order, important services, or guiding society, one thing is certain. People will continue to engage in debate about the varied aspects of each function of government. These debates and discussions keep people engaged in their communities and ensure that the government continues to protect the evolving needs of its people. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and the like button to show some love.
All right, so let's zero in on some things that stand out from the video. So first, the quote from Thomas Jefferson: "The care of human life and happiness, and not their destruction, is the first and only legitimate object of good governance." So we're really seeing that good governance is really all about protecting the human life and happiness, right? So if Thomas Jefferson said that, do you feel that the government cares about your life and happiness right now? You know, are our life and happiness catered to and secured? Does the demolition of our homes and failure to provide property to the masses amount to promoting our life and happiness? The UIC states the first and only legitimate objective of good governance in our philosophy like this: "It is the natural right of every human being to be free. Therefore, the only moral justification and rightful purpose of government is the protection of your life, your liberty, and your property." Let me read that again. The only moral justification and rightful purpose of government is the protection of your life, liberty, and property. The UIC philosophy also goes on to say, good governance is a system that protects our individual liberty, promotes personal responsibility, and provides all citizens a safe, clean, and orderly society. And this is the sure foundation for a truly great and prosperous nation. So again, I ask, in light of these definitions of what government is about, the protection of our life, liberty, and property, promoting our life, happiness, and personal responsibility, providing us with a safe, clean, and orderly society, do you think that the government's action or actions are in keeping with what it's supposed to do, or what it is supposed to do? Or are the government's actions and policies in violation of this mandate? So the video we just watched, listed 4 main responsibilities of the government. One is to keep us safe from external aggressors. Second one is to protect us from each other by maintaining law and order. Third, to provide essential services and guide society. And of course, we should bear in mind, however, that none of these roles and responsibilities should impinge on the liberty of citizens. But what do we really mean by liberty? That's the question. Let's take a look at this explanation. So I'm going to play a video for you guys that looks at what is the philosophy of liberty, and then we come back and talk.
The philosophy of liberty is based on the principle of self-ownership. You own your life. To deny this is to imply that another person has a higher claim on your life than you do. No other person or group of persons owns your life. Nor do you own the lives of others. You exist in time, future, present, and past. This is manifest in life, liberty, and the product of your life and liberty. To lose your life is to lose your future. To lose your liberty is to lose your present. And to lose the product of your life and liberty is to lose that portion of your past that produced it. A product of your life and your liberty is your property. Property is the fruit of your labor, the product of your time, energy, and talents. Property is that part of nature which you turn to valuable use. Property is the property of others that is given to you by voluntary exchange and mutual consent. Two people who exchange property voluntarily are both better off, or they wouldn't do it. Only they may rightfully make that decision for themselves. At times, some people use force or fraud to take from others without voluntary consent. The initiation of force or fraud. To take life is murder. To take liberty is slavery. And to take property is theft. It is the same whether these actions are done by one person acting alone, by the many acting against the few, or even by officials with fine hats. You have the right to protect your own life, liberty, and justly acquired property from the forceful aggression of others. And you may ask others to help defend you. But you do not have the right to initiate force against the life, liberty, and property of others. Thus, you have no right to designate some person to initiate force against others on your behalf. You have the right to seek leaders for yourself. But you have no right to impose rulers onto others. No matter how officials are selected, they are only human beings, and they have no rights or claims that are higher than those of any other human beings. Regardless of the imaginative labels for their behavior, or the numbers of people encouraging them, officials have no right to murder, to enslave, or to steal. You cannot give them any rights that you do not have yourself. Since you own your life, you are responsible for your life. You do not rent your life from others who demand your obedience. Nor are you a slave to others who demand your sacrifice. You choose your own goals based on your own values. Success and failure are both the necessary incentives to learn and to grow. action on behalf of others or their action on behalf of you is virtuous only when it is derived from voluntary mutual consent. For virtue can exist only where there is free choice. This is the basis of a truly free society. It is not only the most practical and humanitarian foundation for human action, it is also the most ethical. Problems in the world that arise from the initiation of force by government have a solution. The solution is for the people of the earth to stop asking government officials to initiate force on their behalf. Evil does not arise only from evil people, but also from good people who tolerate the initiation of force as a means to their own ends. In this manner, good people have empowered evil people throughout history. Having confidence in a free society is to focus on the process of discovery in the marketplace of values, rather than to focus on some imposed vision or goal. Using governmental force to impose a vision on others is intellectual sloth, and typically results in unintended, perverse consequences. Achieving a free society requires courage to think, to talk, and to act, especially when it is easier to do nothing.
Okay, so after watching that video, we kind of get an understanding that true freedom and true independence means protection of your life, your liberty, and your property. And you have the right, by all means necessary, to protect your life, liberty, and property from those who would take them from you. So I'm going to now play another clip, and I would like you to think while you're watching this clip. Just ask yourself the question, are these people's liberty and property being protected, right? So I'm going to play this clip, and while we watch that clip, ask yourself that question.
Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jacksmiller. In all the years I've been in journalism, one of the recurrent stories that we cover is the issue of squatting, informal settlements, and government's repeated attempts, often without success, to get a grip on this issue of shelter and housing and land reform. We're going to be talking about that issue on tonight's program, and joining me in studio we have Dr. Earl Bailey. He's Program Director for Urban and Regional Planning at the University of Technology, also Vice President of the Jamaica Institute of Planners. Architect Margaret Jarrett is with us, as well as his Sustainable Development Consultant Robert Stevens, who is also with the Advocates Network. Later on in the program, we'll hear from the opposition spokespersons. We'll also hear from the government. Before all of that, though, recent developments in Clifton as well as in Pleasant Hill in St. Catherine have put this issue on the national spotlight, into the national spotlight once again. And our production assistant, Javon Gordon, went to talk to people in both those communities to hear their stories.
Floyaden Road is made for our vibe.
Get up to 150 megabits per second fiber fast internet.
We just hear it like last night, and by the next morning, then just come in and slip down everything. She's talking about the demolition of houses in the Bernard Lodge area near Clifton in St. Catherine. The demolition started on Thursday, October 6.
Up first this evening, there was high drama in a section of Bernard Lodge, St. Catherine today as demolition crews began the removal of illegal structures in the area.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness had announced the demolition in Parliament on October 5, 2022.
The government will act to demolish those structures.
According to the Prime Minister, the land had been captured by criminal gangs.
Our review of the community shows that it is a community that has been captured by criminal gangs.
After the demolition, he came back to Parliament.
Notice there wasn't any activity in the reserved area in 2019. So no one, Madam Speaker, can claim any adverse possession.
But the demolition has reignited discussions about squatting and land reform in Jamaica. It's a long-standing problem. Rima, 1977. Armed men from Arnett Gardens raided the community and forcibly removed people from their houses, throwing their belongings in the streets. This was done while then Minister of Housing evicted 1,000 residents who said they were paying rent. Beeston Street in 2012 and 59.5 Lyndhurst Road in 2018, and many others. The United Nations Human Settlement Program, UN Habitat, defines squatting as illegal occupation and use of land and/or buildings. USAID estimated that about 20% of the Jamaican population are squatters. Some residents of Clifton told All Angles they started building because it was affordable.
Born from a poor family, so I don't have that choice, you see? And me, say, some are going to be housing thing, some that try in the future. If you come out to the government, we will pay feet and them something, we could do a thing and pay for it.
Others say they have been living there all their lives.
I was born here. My mother and my father work with Bernard Lodge Sugar Company. They have died. My mother fell off the tractor on her job down there, down the road down there, so, and tractor run over her. So this land is not like say we just come and just take it. It come from my parents, my mother and my father.
Others just took a chance.
The situation occur and you just do what we have to do. No, it's a risk, but you just do what you have to do.
The residents strongly opposed the demolition.
I feel like I fish the water, I feel down, feel mash up. Start back from zero. When we see the house I go down, they write this all up on it. All cold sweat I wash it.
Right now, I'm cut up. Right now, I tell you, my heart shake up. My pressure, everything that's lick me at straight. I have a sister, and she crippled and she been around here so too. And at the end of the day, she come here Saturday, and I don't know if I tell her, say. I don't know if she born here, grow here, and I tell her before with parents. And after that, did. I'm sorry to show that you're no fear, see her. After that, did, so. Right now, people play should they stay.
In Pleasant Hill, St. Catherine last week, more distress over eviction notices served by the state. We're here in the middle of the Pleasant Hill community. We're gauging the reactions of residents who have been issued with an eviction notice December 6. They got the eviction notice on October 6. This date might sound familiar because it's the same day the Clifton homes were demolished. The media coverage and attention were on the Clifton homes, but the people here in Pleasant Hill are equally distraught about leaving the place that they've called home for all their lives.
My father told me that he had the land from the end of 1945 to 46. Yeah. So after that, when he worked and he used to plant here and going toward the park, if you don't plant a little cane to support the estate, them not going to use it on the land. That's how we get it.
My feelings is very hurt. If you understand my feelings, if you know my situation, my blood is bitter. You understand? When I understand the situation. My band come here so come see my father at 44 now. which way me have my 3 kids them. You understand? So if we evacuate from here, where would I go now?
I'm here approximately 35 years. Get my kids them in Pennington where I did live, finish raise them down here. I've got this piece of land from my father, William Parker. He killed out the cane and he gave it to me house and he said to me, he never called me, tell me, he said, Kate, may give you something make your house, but make sure also when government come, you have your money to pay for the land. I say, yes, Scotty. And that's what I go on.
I'm living here about 35 years now. My husband lived here 40 years. We were here unmolested for all those years. Nobody came to molest us or say anything to us towards the land.
Residents were confused when they got the eviction notice.
Oh, that could never right, man. We feel upset about it. All of we feel cut up about this carry on that go and that come to son and this land. We know say we do something and we so far, and we have nowhere else to live and go live.
We can't comfortable with a situation like this. As long as you come in, if you go work and you come in and understand, say, a letter grant, like for instance, December 6th. If you find somewhere to go. There is no happiness in your life. No matter how soft your heart beat or get hard, your heart will get tough as a stone.
99% of people are living in a delusion. America is in crisis.
It was a little embarrassing because we weren't expecting that. And then I just prayed about it and I left everything in the hands of God. And when the others were there, you know, very disturbed about it and stuff like that, we just, you know, tried to see how best we could deal with it.
They felt disappointed by the government's approach.
It's funny in a way, you know, when they give us the paper, them eviction paper, them, we said that could never for the people supposed to live somewhere. We can't live in either in a sea or in a middle road or up in the year. And he not going to take a film way to live. So we can never feel good. And we know that we never gone so far. And instead of we get help up, we get help down.
And we are suffer for somewhere to live. We even can't find food, hardly can't find food, much less. Remember, say, if you not have somewhere to call at home, how you feel like yourself? Look into it.
The residents say they are ready to regularize their status.
So we need the Prime Minister to adjust this thing for we. If him come and have a dialogue with you, reason with you, make we know where we stand. If you not have an idea about it, well, explain it to the people, make we get the full understanding. But it can't work. You understand? And the people then very upset, cross, ignorant, miserable.
A lot of us are ready to pay for the land, ready, whatever it takes that we can be regularized, you know, just send in the surveyor to us to survey the land and let us have a title and we are willing to pay.
Javon Gordon reporting for All Angles.
So interesting, very interesting points of views. We're seeing that some of these residents receive their lands from their parents and grandparents and grandaunts and uncles who actually used to work on the sugar estates. And the land was informally made available for the families of the sugar workers. And this was their agreement. So then how then can we say that they're squatters? How then can we class them as squatters? They were given permission to be on the land. So it is true that some people who have no connection to sugar workers later came and they saw an opportunity to settle on the land, and they're now guilty under law for squatting on government-owned lands. But I want us to pause and think about this for a good minute. Government-owned lands means public-owned lands, right? So we employ the members of parliament and councillors to govern on our behalf and look after the best interests of our lives, our liberty, and our property while we go about our daily lives. We don't have the time nor the inclination to govern and still achieve what we want to. So we hire these people with our votes and we pay them with our taxes. We employ them to look after our country and affairs. So how is it that these people that we employ can own our land without our express consent? Government administers land on our behalf, or should be administering land on our behalf. And so when issues of unclaimed land arise, government is actually supposed to ensure justice and equity in the division and allocation of those lands, and advise the citizens as to how to manage the land after consulting with specialist advisors. But what has happened instead is that after 400 years of slavery, the colonizers failed to give our former slave ancestors property in 1938 after emancipation. So therefore, they had no real liberty. Throughout adult suffrage in 1944, when they told us we had power because we gained the right to vote, they still failed to grant our people any real legitimacy as independent sovereign beings. And after independence in 1962, those who were elected by us, who supposedly were the same like us, followed in the toxic, abusive steps of the colonizers in defrauding the people of land and putting forward the popular fallacy that the land belonged to the government. But how on earth can somebody be elected by us to manage our own affairs, own the land to which we have no access? Settling on privately owned land is a trespass, warranting the intervention of the courts. But how can the people trespass on land owned in common by the people? If the government owns the land, then the people own the land. So has the government not overstepped its bounds and betrayed the purpose by ousting the people out of their own property? Should the government even own property? So that's another question that we should be asking. So I'm going to play a video for you that asks that question. Should the government be owning property? So I'm going to share that video, play that video, and when we come back, we have another discussion.
You have said that the government should not own property. Is there any exception for the national defense in cases in which security might be compromised by leasing an office building that may be bugged? No, I don't think so. I don't see any reason why you can't secure an office building from bugs. I mean, the technology certainly exists. Leasing it from reputable companies, leasing vast quantities of land in order to build a base, and maybe the leases are 1990-year leases, but long-term leases that actually protect you. So I don't think that ownership, I can't think of a situation where ownership is required for national defense. Now, look, there's a sense in which the weapons the government has, it owns. There's a sense in which the money it has in the bank, it owns. There's a sense in which, you know, I don't know, the stationery it's bought, it owns. But it's not exactly ownership, because I think ownership can only be private, can only be by a private entity, by somebody you can say, here, these people own it. A government definition is not anybody specifically. So I don't think the concept of ownership directly applies to it, and I think certainly there's no reason for it to own land, but and in some ways the everything that it has at the, what's the word I'm looking for? At the behest, at the permission of the citizens. That is, it is the citizens' servants, and anything it has is really the citizens. And if the citizens don't fund the government, then the government can't maintain any of it, and it's all gone. It has no meaning. So I think you have to understand that the idea of ownership applies to the government differently than it applies. It doesn't really apply to the government in the sense in which it applies. Private ownership doesn't apply to the government in the sense that it doesn't have property rights, and everything except the stuff that it absolutely is necessary for the execution of its role. That it be under their complete control, like a weapon system or something like that. I think should be leased. Now, I'm sure you could come up with some scenario in which owning a piece of land was necessary for the reasons you mentioned, for some kind of national security reasons. Okay, then I wouldn't have a problem with it. But again, I think the whole issue of ownership is, you have to think of it differently because it's the government. Okay, Action Jackson says, the FBI arrested leader of an armed group that is stopping immigrants after they cross the U.S.-Mexico border into New Mexicans. Do civilians have a right to patrol the border? Only the Fed Border Patrol. I mean, you don't have a right to walk around with a gun and point that gun at somebody who is not threatening you. Who is not threatening you and is not committing a violent crime. So you're not doing it as an act of self-defense. So you don't have a right to point a gun at people who are not committing a crime. So, I mean, this is vigilantism, but yes, vigilantism against people who are not even committing a violent crime. So I have almost no sympathy for it. Now, if it's your land, if you own the land, and you've got a sign out, no trespassers, and you're patrolling your land on the border, then fine. Then it's your property. You're defending your property against people who are violating your rights by entering your property without permission. But if it's not your property, and it's not your friend's property who invited you to be on their property, if it's not private property, then no, you can't go into the public space with a gun and point it at people because they're doing things that you think objectionable. Right? I mean, I don't think even a shoplifter, would you point a gun at a shoplifter? I mean, I don't think so. I think you point a gun when the issue is violence. When the issue is violence. I mean, maybe a shoplifter because it's a violation of property rights, and but it would depend on the circumstances. To what extent was there a real threat? What were they stealing? Are they stealing a bottle of water? Are they stealing, or are they robbing a bank, right? So, notice that I'm thinking on my feet here, guys, on a lot of these questions, and just for what it's worth, right? It's not, my answers are not ready-made, right? I don't have a list of the answers to all questions. Objectivism doesn't work that way. You have to work through the answers. So hopefully it's valuable to you to see me try to work through these. So I don't think crossing the border it's not a violent crime. It's not a property crime. You're not entering somebody's property and theoretically a threat. You're not stealing anything from anybody. I mean, fine if you want to patrol the border and call the border patrol if you see somebody crossing the border. That's absolutely within your right and fine and no problem. But to point a gun, that is mob rule, and absolutely somebody like that should be arrested. Absolutely. Right? We don't run the country with, by gang rule. We don't run the country by vigilantes. We don't run the country with militias, Militias don't run the United States of America. I mean, again, unless you're willing to declare civil war.
So the question is, here's the question. If the government should not even be owning property, then it has committed a crime against the people and created laws to protect itself from prosecution. Then it has perpetuated these evil laws as the norm, and we, the people, have accepted it in our ignorance. That's really what's been happening, right? Governments all over the world have betrayed their mandate with exploitative laws, laws that exploit our rights as citizens. But even their laws betray them, because Jamaica's Registration of Titles Act allows squatters to possess private property after 12 years of occupation and to possess the fallacy of government-owned property after 60 years of occupation. So here we have a situation where in your laws, you're saying that squatters, these people that are supposed to be illegal on the land, can have access or can have the right to possess, if you've possessed the land for more than 12 years, or if this is private land, or if you've possessed the land, if you've possessed government-owned land for more than 60 years, you're allowed to do that. Not only that, but the Prescription Act also allows citizens to access premises in perpetuity if they have been using them unbothered for the last 20 years. So now the question is, if that's the case, is squatting illegal or not? Because if it's illegal and you're giving them a way to be legal, then what sense does that make? Why provide the possession through illegal means in legislation, right? This makes squatting legal if not caught before the prescribed time. So basically, if you see a private property and you go and you you take over, you go and squat on the land, right? And if you do that for 12 years and you aren't caught, you're good. If it is so-called government land, then and you're squatting on that for 60 years, then you're good. So then, what's the purpose of this illegality of squatting then? So, having said all of that, what is the UIC solution? And if you've been listening to our lives throughout the week, you should know some of these things. But before we get to the UIC solution, how did this kind of government arise? How did government begin to take on the role of overlord and master instead of servant and arbitrator? Right? It all arose when leaders used force and fraud through their accumulated wealth to impose on others. This is the legacy of the colonial system we inherited. This system gives our government the leeway to step over their limits and propose and abuse the people. However, the UIC has a solution. We will topple this kind of system, the system of governance, and not just tinker with, not just fix, not just reword, but completely replace the Constitution that upholds the rights of the people. Replace the Constitution for a Constitution that upholds the rights of the people to their life, liberty, and property. Rights that no government or any other individual or corporation or group can take away or limit. So we will definitely ensure that each family has property to protect by divesting government-owned lands so that each family can pass on an inheritance and each citizen can truly be independent. We'll also restructure the system of governance so no ruler can ever again defraud the people. This is the difference between the current system of governance and the UIC's system of governance. So, having said all of that, are there any questions? I'm seeing some comments here. Delroy Henry says, UIC team, keep up your good work. Much appreciated. UK shout out. Thank you, Delroy. All the way from UK. Wow. It's probably, what time is it in the UK now? You're up pretty late because it's 8 o'clock here now. But thanks all the same for tuning in at this late time to hear what we have to say on UIC TV, Liberty TV. Andrew, the godfather of lies and corruptions, did give out his warning years ago. Bitter medicine, that's true. This is it. The godfather of lies knows Jamaican trouble with short-term memory. That's right. The thing is that we're so easily distracted, right? So there are a lot of things happening right now in Jamaica that are distracting us from what's really happening behind the scenes. Over the last 2 years, we saw where we were distracted completely with, you know, the impending illness that was happening over the last 2 years. And while that was happening, you know, while we're being told to, you know, wash our hands and wear our masks and social distance or stay home and all of these things, you know, the government was busy putting legislation and putting, you know, laws in place to change things. So they gave away, I can't even say gave away because they actually sold, not sold, they paid to give away the Bank of Jamaica. I don't get it, but they gave away the Bank of Jamaica and paid money for that to happen. You know, the NIDS thing was happening under the quiet. Well, not under the quiet, because, you know, they tried to push it forward and then the Supreme Court kind of, but they found a way to go around it. All of that was happening. The CBDC and the formation of it was all happening. And so it was a perfect, what was happening over the last 2.5, 3 years was a perfect distraction for all the other things that are happening, right? So, we've seen where the government is using distraction tactics, you know, using things happening, you know, in Jamaica to kind of distract us from what's really happening. And so that is really what's been happening to us for the last 7 to 8 years, to be honest with you. I mean, part of it, because I mean, there are other things that has been happening, you know, bad governance, corruption, you know, all of that's been happening as well. Anthony Archibald says, politicians in Jamaica take people of them for fools, straight up, that's true. But we allow them to. We allow them to take us for fools. Because every 5 years, for the last 7 to 8 years, we've been voting them in. So, I mean, it's one thing for them to take us for fools, but it's another thing for us to actually put them back in every 5 years. You know, every 5 years, we have the history to show. 7 to 8 years of regression. And, you know, the UIC goes out and we share with people, we share the policies, the plans, we share the manifesto, this 10-point plan, you know, the education plan, the crime plan. And, you know, people say, yes, you know, that sounds good, but what but? I mean, really, what but? What are you comparing us to, right? You have us and you have the history of the last 7 to 8 years. To me, it's a no-brainer. There's no buts that should be in the conversation, you know? But again, we've been brainwashed, you know, we've been, you know, yeah, brainwashed into this whole partisan divide, and that was all, you know, planned. The division between one side and another side, green or orange, or, you know, JLP or PNP. These two parties were really built to divide us. They weren't designed for uniting Jamaica, and that's why, you know, the UIC, the first word in our name is united. We're here to unite the country. You know, all factions, all groups, all people. So whether you're JLP or PNP, whether you're Christian or Rasta, whether you're gay or straight, it does not matter. We want to unite Jamaica, right? We want to unite the independent thinkers of Jamaica. We want, and this is why we are the education party, because we want people to know, be able to think independently, right? So we want to unite all these independent thinkers and create a Congress, not a parliament. You know, we want to create a non-partisan constitutional republic. So we're going to do away with partisan politics and move towards a unifying way of representing our people, and of providing, you know, or respecting, you know, each person's right to life, liberty, and property, right? Wade Noble says this wilderness system will crumble under the weight of the UIC. Absolutely. As soon as the people wake up, then the game is over. Yes, and they're waking up little by little. As we've seen in the last 3 elections, people are just getting fed up. You know, so the last election, 63% didn't vote. Election before that, it was 50-something%, and election before that, it was 40-something%. So we're seeing, you know, a gradual pulling away from the polls by the majority of people now, you know, 63%, right? And we're seeing, as it is right now, we have a government that is the government based on 21% of the voting population. So the majority of people do not want the JLP to govern us, right? If you're going to look at the numbers and the stats, that's what the stats are saying, you know. So we really have an issue that we need to really come together now. You know, we really need to come together, and as a, you know, our thing is the handshake. We need to come together and, you know, align our forces, or align our thoughts around ideas that will, you know, bring us out of the dark ages that we are definitely heading to. I mean, I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this with a serious face. I might be smiling, but I'm serious. If we continue down the path that we're on, it's not going to look pretty. Not just for Jamaica, but for the rest of the world, right? So another comment here by Desmond Mary. Oh, good night, UIC family. Bless up yourself, Desmond. Cicely Gordon, good night. Good night. Where are you coming? Where are you watching from, Cicely? Wade Noble says Joseph L. Patterson will be powering to the finishing line. Definitely. Wade Noble also says the most intelligent, brilliant, and smart leader in Jamaica now. Definitely. It's one of the things that when you look at, you know, compare Mr. Patterson with Mr. Golding and Mr. Holness, I mean, there's no comparison really. It's a runaway from Mr. Patterson, and that's one of the reasons I believe they don't want to. Okay, Mobe, welcome, Cicely. That's one of the reasons I think they don't want to, you know, get him in a debate, because it's just going to show up how dunce they are. You know, what we're seeing a lot of in politics is people are just using politics as a means to get rich. So there is no, you know, you see where the UIC has this policy of, you know, in order for you to represent whatever constituency or whatever, or if you want to be a senator, or if you want to be, you know, a VP of a county, whatever area you want to represent, you're going to have to do a good governance test first. That's the first thing. You have to pass this good governance test. Right now, there is no good governance test. So we have people who are, I mean, literally all and sundry, right? People who, you know, just have their own ambitions and are seeing this as a way and a means to eke out, you know, a better way of life for their family and their friends. At the, you know, on the backs of the rest of the Jamaicans. And so, you know, we're seeing more and more people getting into politics, not to represent and make Jamaica any better, but to getting into politics just for, you know, the benefits and the linkages and the, you know, the access to funds and the ability to corrupt, to be corrupt and to do corrupt things and get away with it. Or if you're caught, you know, it's a little slap on the wrist, and you know, people don't hear from you for 6 months, and then, you know, you're gone straight back in. You know, this is a kind of thing, that system that we have, and so we really need to get serious now and say enough is enough. We've had this for the last 78 years. I mean, how much longer do we need? It's almost, you know, as I said, I've said earlier, before on this program, it's 22 years short of a century. 78 years is 22 years short of a century. How many more years do we need to come to the realization that something needs to change? And that change has to happen with us, right? Because of how the system is set up. We have the PSOJ funding both parties. And, you know, as it is right now, if you don't have any kind of funding or big funding, you really can't win the election as it is now, right? And so we really need to get behind the UIC and provide the proper funding for the UIC to be able to really properly represent the people of Jamaica in the next elections, right? So, sweet lady is saying, who don't have a clue and want to make money? Exactly. The politicians don't have a clue, don't know anything about good governance, don't really care. They're all about just, you know, eking out something for their family and their future, right? So, guys, I want to thank you all for being on the live tonight. It's a very short live, 1 hour and 7 minutes. But I really appreciate all 82 of you that are on right now. It was higher earlier on. Some people dropped off. But I really want to thank you guys for coming on. And I appreciate the fact that you guys tune in every night at 7 p.m. And join us in our discussion and in our conversation. A lot of times it's class that's in session when Mr. Patterson is here, definitely. And we learn a lot. And it's one of the things that, you know, we as the UIC, it's one of our strengths. You know, we are here to educate the people, because the people have really been dumbed down. You know, they've been purposely dumbed down so that they can't really understand some things. And so they now have to rely on the government or the MP or their councillor candidate to have anything done, right? We are here to empower, to educate, so that giving you all the information so that you, the people, can make the best decision for yourselves. UIC to form the next government. Bless up yourself. Ricky. Wade says 10. Thank you, Wade. I didn't even give the, I didn't even ask for ratings, but, you know, guys, drop in the comments. Rate tonight's show, please. Give me a 10 if it was, you know, value packed, and if you got a lot out of it. And if you didn't get anything out of it, give us a 1. I want your true, real, honest opinion. So please let me know in the chat. Sweet lady, thank you for the education. You are so welcome. It's one of the things that I fell in love with when I first started following the UIC. Is I was, every night when they had a live, I was on, because I was just learning so much, you know. And I really thank God for me finding this, or this coming in my way, you know, for me to, you know, really take a look at it and say, yeah, this makes sense. This is actually what I've been looking for from I actually started voting, right? Well, the first time I was going to vote, I voted for the NDM because I just couldn't find myself voting for JLP or PNP. And you're young. This is your first vote. You're saying you want to exercise your right, and I couldn't find myself to vote JLP or PNP. And I really did like what the NDM was saying, so I voted NDM. And since then I have not voted. So I've only voted. No, I actually voted twice. I've actually voted twice in my life. All the last 3 or 4 elections, I haven't voted because what's the point? But anyway, JMH 10. Thank you, JMH. Dornet Myers, bless up yourself, Dornet. 100. Thank you. Sewing and Gotcha Life videos. Thank you for the 10. Joseph Richardson, I just joined, but I know it was a good 10. Thank you, Joseph. Kirk, 10. Kirk, please call the UIC's office and give them your number to give me, and I will give you a call. I know that you've been wanting to get in contact with me for some time, and I know you don't want to give your number on the post it in the chat here. So call. Let me give you the number to call. Call. Where are we now? Right. So call the first number, 876-293-0812. Call them and tell them you want Douglas Harper to call you, and so this is the number for him to reach you on. I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you, Kirk. All right, so thanks for the 10, Kirk. Keith Romans, Uncle Keith, bless of yourself, 1,000. Curleen Gordon, hi, give 10. Thank you, Curleen. Wade Noble says the UIC is the game changer. Indeed, it is. So I just want to thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you all have a good night and a good rest of the end of the week, a good weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow. We're actually going to be talking about the UIC's finances tomorrow. We're going to have our treasurer coming on and giving you guys a little insight on our finances and what's been happening. So looking forward to that. Hope you guys tune in tomorrow at 7. And thank you guys for coming on. And remember, one Jamaica, stronger together. Thank you. Good night.